Well, we'll go to H-Town. Entering the fourth year of his 5-year rookie contract, a big payday may be in DeAndre Hopkins' near future. Currently making an average of $2 million a year, Hopkins ranked 3rd in the league in receptions and yards and 7th in touchdowns. Not too shabby. Hopkins told our Tanya Ganguly that he doesn't expect a specific number for his next contract, but he wants to be treated for what he's worth. So, Stephen A., how much is he worth is the question.
I would say that he's worth a minimum of $60 million guaranteed. Does he deserve the $70 to $71 million that Des Bryant and Demaryius Thomas got? No. Does he deserve the $71 million that Julio Jones got? No. Does the person that can go out there and, as far as I'm concerned, break the market is Antonio Brown for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that right now he's proven to be the best receiver in football. Both he and Julio Jones had 136 receptions last year, even though Julio Jones had more yards. Playing with Matt Ryan and what have you, they can do those things. They can compete for that because Julio Jones is a stud. But Antonio Brown is just so special. And the reason why I would value him a little bit over Julio Jones is because for some reason Antonio Brown excels in special teams as well, not just as a receiver. So I consider him a dual threat. As long as he's healthy, I would say that Antonio Brown should be the highest paid receiver in football. But when you take out those two, then everybody else is debatable. Demaryius with Des Bryant, they were both, you know, Des was hurt last year. Demaryius Thomas fell off a little bit, seemed to lose a step, but it also didn't help that Peyton Manning was certainly a shell of itself. And now that you're going to have either Mark Sanchez or Paxton Lynch or somebody else, you know, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to blame Demaryius Thomas for that. We'll wait and see. In the case of DeAndre Hopkins, I'm thinking about a guy, the offense in Houston was ranked 21 last year. Their passing attack was ranked 18th, and I'm thinking about the quarterbacks. Don't get me started with Brian Hoyer, who's lucky to be in the league. Ryan Mallett, T.J. Yates, Brandon Whedon, B.J. Marshall. You're talking about 4 to 5 different quarterbacks. And somehow, some way, DeAndre Hopkins still had 111 receptions for over 1,500 yards. So when I look at it from that perspective, plus I take into account his youth, the fact that he's only had 3 years in the league and he's excelled and elevated his level of play each year, I would say a safe bet, I'm thinking minimum 55 to 60 million guaranteed. Anything else you pull off there is gravy, but there is no doubt that DeAndre Hopkins deserves at least 55 to 60 million in guaranteed if the 4 aforementioned are all in, well, not Antonio Brown, but Julio Jones, who deserves to be up there number 1 or 2, Des Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, T.Y. Hilton, guys like that. Yeah, he deserves in that kind of range.
I think, look, when you look at what guys get paid, it's not just how good they are. It's where are they in their contracts, how much leverage do they have, how good do they make their team? Is it a moment of leverage for the team where they need to pay a guy to stay relevant or to get over the top? If you look at what guys in his position are making, meaning they can exercise your team option and still pay you less than you're worth, I think it comes in more like $14 million a year in salary, maybe like $40 million guaranteed, just because it's not like he's a free agent. You know what I mean? He's trying to kind of buy out a year. And I also think that Hopkins is the most underrated receiver in the NFL. You never hear his name mentioned. You mentioned a bunch of guys. I actually think when he's on the field, I think Antonio Brown, you're just tough to argue against him. I think Odell Beckham is right there, and he's ascending. I think Julio Jones rounds out. Those 3 guys are qualitatively different than everybody else. But I think there's a rung right there. Like, oh, you could call it the top 5 or maybe the top 3 and then plus. And I think it's Des Bryant and DeAndre Hopkins. I like him. I think he's better than Demaryius Thomas, to tell you the truth.
Yes, he is right now.
Yeah,
I think so.
The reason I think that, I know his reception percentage isn't very high, but you mentioned it, Stephen A. Who is throwing him the ball? Hoyer, Mallett, Whedon. These are not serious NFL quarterbacks. And yet you look at how he does against all different kinds of coverage. Against 4 DBs, he's 9th in the league. 5 DBs, he's 10th in the league. Against 6 DBs, he's 1st in the league. Well, I mean, if you know, your reception percentage is not going to be great under all those circumstances when you're the only target and you don't have guys getting you the ball who can throw.
I will say this. and I'm glad you brought this up because I want to make sure, just in case I didn't say it right, the numbers that I gave out are their dollars.
Right.
Then there's the guaranteed portion. Julio Jones, $35.5 million. I'm just reading from here, from the notes here. Des Bryant's at $32 million. Demaryius Thomas at $35 million. A.J. Green, who's at $60 million, but $26.7 million guaranteed. These are guarantees at the signing.
Right.
When I'm talking about, I'm not.
And that's going to keep getting reset when the next guy
I'm not talking about DeAndre Jordan deserves $60 million in guarantees. I don't mean to say that.
Yeah.
I'm saying if a Julio Jones is at $71 million with $35.5 million guaranteed at signing, I think somebody like a DeAndre Hopkins should be at $60 million with about 25 guaranteed.
Not only that, but when he comes up,
that's what I mean.
When he comes up, he's good enough to reset the market. You know,
That's right.
Is he better than Julio Jones? No, he's not better than Julio Jones. But he's good enough that if he's the next guy up and that guy's getting 35, maybe he gets 38.
The only reason I would disagree with you there is because you're only as good as your quarterback allows you to be.
Yep.
And because they
Shows you how good he is.
because Brock Osweiler, I didn't say how good he's been, but if Brock Osweiler goes in there and he's not what they thought he is, or they thought he was going to be Rick Smith and Bill O'Brien.
Yep.
The fact is that DeAndre Hopkins is going to suffer. Now, that may not be his fault, but because you can't make that much of a difference anyway, why am I going to give you those dollars?
You watch this guy. He's a
stud.
He's a great receiver.
He's a stud. He's a stud, no doubt.
And now we should be hearing Osweiler, hopefully, to Hopkins, but this team getting Lamar Miller. It should be interesting. They could be pretty good. And, of course, J.J. Watt underwent the surgery. He just posted a thing on social media, so hopefully he should be ready to go.
The defense will be all right if the offense steps up and does something to make Bill O'Brien and Rick Smith look good. Brock Osweiler better show up since he ran out of Denver. He better show up.
Another call to action from
Better show up.
Meanwhile, Ty Lue took over last season, led the Cavs to the title. Now he got the dollars and the security. Does he deserve that extension he got? Max, Stephen A. will weigh in with their thoughts. Keep it here.
Oh my God.
To the land, after leading Cleveland to the city's first championship in 52 years, the Cavaliers and Ty Lue agreed on a 5-year extension worth $35 million, first reported by The Vertical, confirmed by ESPN. Sources have told ESPN that the first 4 years are fully guaranteed, with the fifth as a team option. Lue gambled on himself by not signing an extension when he took over for David Blatt in January. Bet on himself, and it paid off. But, Stephen A., do you think he deserves this contract extension?
He absolutely does. He absolutely does. Tyronn Lue did an outstanding job. I knew he had the right pedigree because he had Doc Rivers, helping him along to get to the point that he got to last year. I sat down and did the interview with him the day after he got the job. He's even-keeled, he's strong, he holds dudes accountable, and he doesn't panic. And I think that goes a long, long way. They made believers out of me because I never believed that they would come back from a 3-1 deficit. I was beyond disgusted with them because of how they played in Game 4. That was the only game that I was critical of LeBron because I thought he didn't show up that game, and I still believe to this very day he had instigated that stuff with Draymond Green and those guys, but it turned out that it worked for him. So, you try everything to win. But in the end, what it comes down to is this. Tyronn Lue knows the game of basketball. Tyronn Lue went from an inside-out to an outside-in attack. He upped the tempo, changed the philosophy that David Blatt had in play. He was obviously able to hold LeBron James, Kyrie, Kevin Love, and others accountable. Acquiring Channing Frye, a part of David Griffin, deserves a lot of credit. But how he utilized them in the playoffs, but then benched them in the finals because you saw that it was a matchup problem because Channing Frye couldn't even get a shot off in the finals. I mean, Tyronn Lue made adjustments, and I think that Steve Kerr has proven to be an outstanding coach. There is no doubt about it. But he got beat. They didn't just get beat as players. They got beat as coaches against Tyronn Lue and Larry Drew and Phil Handy and those boys in Cleveland. And when you consider the fact that Scott Brooks got fired from Oklahoma City and then got the job in Washington, D.C. at $7 million a year, $35 million over 5 years. How the hell are you going to give Scott Brooks that money and you don't pay Tyronn Lue?
Because they thought it meant Kevin Durant.
But I'm just saying, I'm being rhetorical there because I'm saying Tyronn Lue is not speculative.
Right.
He's done it.
Yep.
Look,
give him his money, and they did, and they should have.
LeBron was the reason they won the championship. LeBron was a brilliant coach on the court and off. LeBron was the guy who, after they were smoking the whole Eastern Conference, playing the spread pick and roll like they were the Golden State Warriors, bombing from 3, like changing their style of play, LeBron was the guy who said, I got to get Kevin Love going here and sacrificed the game against Toronto in order to try to do it. And then when it didn't happen, went to a plan B in the finals and then brought his team all the way back and played out of this universe after not playing particularly well early in the series, having an all-time great finals. So anyone who coaches LeBron James in that circumstance is likely to seem special. However, David Blatt had LeBron James the year before, and when they were down 3-1, I was sitting there going, David Blatt was the coach when they got to a Game 6 without Kyrie or Kevin Love. Boy, Tyronn Lue does not look very good right now, but he looked very good by the end of the series, including some of the defensive changes he made, which kept the greatest half-court offense in the history of basketball by the numbers, the Warriors, without a single point in the last 4 minutes and 39 seconds of Game 7 of the finals. I saw you there. We ran into each other at those finals. One of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. Lue deserves a lot of credit for that. He easily deserves at least this much money in a contract.
He definitely deserves it, and the key word there is adjustments. He made them. That's something that David Blatt wasn't doing much of in the previous finals. David Blatt doesn't deserve to be maligned. But Tyronn Lue does deserve to be celebrated for the job that he's done.
And how about this? Even if it's just making LeBron comfortable, if that's the guy LeBron wants, that's a good enough reason to re-sign him, but it's more than that.
There you go.
No question. Nick Saban stopped by. You weren't here. He said the best talent he's faced since Cam, Deshaun Watson of Clemson. He will be here tomorrow. We are looking forward to that. He came back. It's all right, right? Fitting him very nicely. I like it. Good stuff.